I missed my flight that morning, the kind of mundane disaster that somehow makes you notice everything around you. In the crowded terminal, I saw her, a woman sitting cross-legged on the tile, a baby slumped against her chest. She was impossibly striking, thin but composed, with hair like dampened straw and eyes that flickered between exhaustion and defiance. People stepped around her, avoiding contact. I stopped. Something in me stirred. Without thinking, I walked to my bag and dug out my keys. My beach house, empty for months, a retreat I hadn't yet used this year, felt suddenly like a tool, a gesture, a way to assert some invisible kindness. "I'll be gone for 3 months," I said. "Stay there. It's yours." She didn't answer immediately. She just looked at the keys, then at the baby, then back at me. Finally, a small, almost imperceptible nod. The negotiation was quiet but persistent. When I tried to limit the stay, she countered calmly, almost lethargically, stretching 3 months into 6. I argued a little, then let it go, amused by my own inability to enforce the plan. Pride tangled with unease. I left the airport feeling generous and absurdly naive at the same time. For 6 months, I didn't hear from her. I imagined the house empty, the waves unchanged, my solitude intact. Yet I couldn't stop imagining her there, the way she might hang the sheets, the way the baby's laughter could echo across the rooms. My mind returned to her in quiet, anxious flickers, sometimes with warmth, sometimes with something heavier, like apprehension I couldn't name. When I finally returned, the street looked the same, but the house, it wasn't the house I'd left. The garden had been reshaped, hedges pruned into neat, improbable shapes. A small vegetable patch thrived where I'd only imagined flowers. Inside, subtle changes marked her presence. Furniture shifted, curtains hung differently, a faint smell of herbs and something smoky in the air. I was still the owner on paper, but the house belonged to someone else now. Then authority intervened. A municipal inspector was there, clipboard in hand. "We need to discuss occupancy regulations," she said. "There are permits, zoning, child safety." I opened my mouth, but the words faltered. I had imagined confrontation in abstract terms, not this procedural certainty that stripped me of narrative control. I was no longer the protagonist in a story I could shape. The inspector pointed to modifications I hadn't approved, and the woman, calm as always, nodded, providing documentation I hadn't thought to check. The shift was tangible. I felt my confidence shrink, my ownership suspended in a suspended legality I hadn't foreseen. She didn't gloat. She barely looked at me. Her leverage was quiet, almost invisible, just fact and paperwork, a reminder that my act of generosity had unintended gravity. I walked through the house, past the rearranged furniture, the child's small handprints on the walls. Everything familiar was subtly altered, imbued with her presence. Pride, irritation, admiration, they collided in my chest. I realized that my generosity hadn't bought gratitude, nor had it bought chaos. It had bought a lesson I hadn't anticipated, that giving, even with the best intentions, carries consequences I cannot control. The inspector left after an hour, leaving me with the woman and the baby in the living room, silent except for the soft cooing of the child. She smiled faintly, a mixture of acknowledgement and reassurance, as if nothing had changed, and yet everything had. I wanted to speak, to reclaim some fragment of authority, but the words never formed. I turned to leave, walking through the doorway that had once felt like mine alone. Outside, the air was briny and sharp, the tide low. I paused, listening to the distant crash of waves, unsure whether I felt relief, regret, or merely the hollow echo of a lesson learned too late. I had given, yes,
But in giving, I had stepped into a space I could not predict or command. My impulsive generosity had shifted something fundamental: the house, my perception of control, the quiet rules of ownership. And yet I could not judge her. She had done nothing wrong. She had claimed only what I had handed her, with patience and discretion I had lacked. I walked away slowly, leaving the keys, the house, the child, and her silent dominion behind. The moral weight of my act pressed against me in a way that had no solution, no closure, no victory. Only questions. Was it kindness, foolishness, or something else entirely, unnameable? And the house, reshaped by her hands, waited quietly for me to decide, if I ever could, what it had become.